One of the deepest wishes INFJs have is to be seen, not just superficially acknowledged, but truly seen for who they are beneath the carefully managed exterior. They don't want to have to constantly explain their complex layers or justify their need for solitude and depth. To the outside world, they may seem distant or overly idealistic, but inside, they are constantly wrestling with competing values, emotional truths, and a desire to do right by everyone. They wish people understood that their high standards come from a place of purpose, not judgment. They long to improve the world around them. Yet they often feel powerless when they realize not everyone shares their level of concern or care. INFJs also wish people understood that their ability to intuitively read emotions and motives is not a trick or a game. It's an innate part of their personality, something they didn't choose but live with every day. They often pick up on undercurrents in conversations or subtle emotional shifts that others miss entirely, and this makes them hyper-aware in social settings. Yet when they act on these insights or try to help, they're sometimes met with skepticism or accused of overreacting. This is deeply painful for them because their intentions are almost always pure. They aren't trying to manipulate situations. They're trying to create harmony and deeper understanding. Unlock the power of your INFJ personality. Check out our INFJ course and INFJ ebook. The links are in the description of this video. Many INFJs feel emotionally exhausted by the world. They're constantly absorbing the energy around them, and because they care so deeply, they can become overwhelmed by the suffering they witness. Whether it's in a close relationship or global issues, they internalize pain in a way that is both noble and self-destructive. What they wish others knew is that when they disappear or go silent, it's not rejection, it's recovery. They need solitude not because they dislike people, but because they're trying to realign themselves after being pulled in too many directions emotionally. INFJs also crave depth in relationships. They aren't content with surface-level interactions or small talk. They want to talk about dreams, fears, philosophy, spirituality, the things that make up the soul. They wish others understood that their desire for depth isn't meant to be intimidating or heavy. It's just who they are. When they ask deep questions or offer intense insights, they're not trying to corner or overwhelm anyone. They're inviting connection at the level that feels natural to them. INFJs wish people knew how hard they try to make life better for others, often at their own expense. They overextend, overgive, and overthink because they care that much. But behind their gentle strength is someone who often feels lonely, tired, and misunderstood. They long for someone to offer them the same grace, understanding, and emotional nourishment they so freely give to others. They want to be asked how they are feeling, not just praised for being strong or wise. What INFJs truly wish is not to be treated as enigmas or emotional fixers, but as human beings, deep-feeling, richly layered, quietly brave individuals who are trying to navigate life in a way that honors their vision, their values, and their heart. Understanding them means looking beyond their calm face and into the quiet storm that fuels their empathy, their insight, and their uncommon depth. INFJs often walk through the world feeling like aliens in human skin, deeply attuned to the emotional undercurrents of others, yet constantly struggling to find a place where they themselves feel truly at home. What they long for more than anything is to be understood without having to translate themselves. They wish people could read between their silences, understand their long pauses, and recognize that what might seem like withdrawal is often their way of preserving emotional equilibrium in a world that rarely stops feeling too much. They wish others understood that their constant need for meaning isn't drama or sensitivity, it's survival. Small talk feels like poison to their soul, while conversations about purpose, pain, transformation, and truth bring them alive. They're not trying to be intense or different for the sake of it. They were simply born with this lens. They observe patterns, read between words, and sense emotional climates like weather. And when people call them too deep or too sensitive, it stings in a way most will never see, because what's being rejected isn't just their thoughts, but their entire way of being. INFJs also wish people realize how hard they work to keep others comfortable. Even in rooms full of people, they're often the emotional thermostat, adjusting their tone, their presence, even their truth to accommodate the needs and energy of those around them. They wish someone would notice when they're doing this, that someone would say, "You don't have to shapeshift for me. You're enough as you are." Because so much of their emotional labor goes unseen, and while they do it gladly, it leaves them feeling invisible. They wish others knew that when they seem guarded, it's not coldness. It's history. INFJs carry old wounds like sacred scripts, each betrayal, misunderstanding, or emotional letdown etched into the way they protect themselves. They want to open up. They want to let people in. But they've learned the hard way that their depth often overwhelms, their honesty makes others uncomfortable, and their loyalty isn't always returned. So they retreat. Not because they don't care, but because they care too much, and they're tired of giving parts of themselves that others don't know how to hold. They want people to understand that their kindness is not naivety. It's a conscious decision, an act of quiet rebellion in a world that often praises hardness over heart. They know when they're being used. They see manipulation coming from miles away, but sometimes they still give, still love, still show up. Not because they don't see, but because they choose love, knowing full well it may not be returned. INFJs also wish people knew that beneath their calm, rational exterior, there's a storm of emotions and visions. They don't just see people as they are, they see them as they could be. This makes them compassionate, but also easily disappointed. They fall in love with potential, with soul glimpses, with unspoken connections. They want others to understand that when they feel let down, it's not because they were unrealistic, it's because they were seeing something beautiful in someone that the person themselves couldn't yet see. INFJs wish that someone, somewhere, would fight to understand them the way they fight to understand everyone else. That someone would sit with them, not rush them, not judge them, not try to fix them, but truly be with them. Ask what they believe in. What keeps them up at night? What makes them stay silent when they want to scream? What dreams they've buried because they were too tender to expose to a harsh world. There's a quiet ache in the heart of almost every INFJ, the ache of being profoundly connected to others, yet feeling unknown by them. What INFJs secretly wish people understood is how deeply lonely it can feel to constantly understand everyone else, but rarely feel understood in return. They can walk into a room and intuitively grasp what others are feeling, what they need, what they're hiding, even what they might be denying to themselves. But when they speak their truth, when they try to express the vast inner world they've carried in silence, they're often met with blank stares, shallow responses, or quick subject changes. It's disheartening. It makes them question whether anyone truly can understand them, or if their role in life is simply to be the listener, the guide, the healer, never the one who gets to be held. They wish people knew that being calm and composed doesn't mean they're okay. INFJs are masters of internal regulation. They can be falling apart on the inside and still offer a warm smile, a comforting word, or a thoughtful insight. This often leads people to assume they're always fine, always strong, always self-sufficient. But in truth, they're often barely holding themselves together. They wish people looked beyond their emotional composure and asked, "What do you need?" Not out of obligation, but out of genuine care. INFJs also long for others to respect the depth of their emotional world. Their feelings aren't fleeting or superficial. When they love, it's soul deep. When they're hurt, it echoes for years. They replay conversations, not because they're obsessive, but because they want to understand what went wrong, how they could have shown up better, or whether they misread the energy. They want people to know that their emotional intensity is not instability, it's sincerity. It's a reflection of how much they care, how much they feel, and how seriously they take relationships, trust, and truth. INFJs wish others understood is how exhausting it is to live in a world that rewards extroversion, speed, and surface-level interaction. INFJs crave slowness, stillness, and meaning. Crowded places, rushed conversations, performative socializing, these drain them to the core. And yet, they often feel pressured to participate, to be on, to play along just to fit in. They wish they could say no without guilt. They wish people wouldn't take their need for solitude personally. It's never about escaping people. It's about preserving themselves. They also wish people knew how much thought goes into every word they say. INFJs are constantly filtering their words, measuring their tone, and thinking 3 steps ahead. They don't speak for the sake of being heard. They speak when they feel it matters. So when they do open up, it's not casual. It's a rare, sacred moment. They wish people would treat their words with the same weight they carry. Not interrupt. Not brush it off. Not turn it into a joke. Just listen. There's also the pressure of being the wise one or the therapist friend. INFJs often attract people who unload their problems, lean on them for guidance, and expect them to always have the answers. While INFJs do offer profound insight and healing, they also carry their own emotional wounds, many of which they never speak about. They wish people would check in on them too. Ask how they're doing. Offer to hold their pain for once. They want people to remember that even healers need healing. Even givers need receiving. Even empaths need empathy. What INFJs also rarely say aloud is how much they long to be chosen, not for what they do, but for who they are. They often end up being someone's emotional support system, someone's muse, someone's deep conversation partner, but not someone's first choice, not someone's safe place. They wish someone would see past the roles they play and love them, the quiet, poetic, stormy soul beneath it all. They wish people understood that behind their constant search for meaning is a desire for alignment. They want their actions to match their values. They want their relationships to feel purposeful. They want their life to matter. And when they feel stuck in shallow environments or emotionally dishonest situations, it slowly suffocates them. They may not leave abruptly, but their spirit begins to withdraw, bit by bit, until they feel like a ghost of themselves. INFJs wish people knew that they are not invincible, not immune to disappointment, not unaffected by being misunderstood, dismissed, or emotionally neglected. They may forgive easily and love deeply, but they don't forget pain. They carry it in the quietest corners of their heart, where no one ever thinks to look. And in those hidden places, they long, sometimes desperately, for someone to reach in, stay, and whisper, "I see you, all of you, and I'm not going anywhere." INFJs are also tired of being labeled as mysterious or hard to read. While it may seem romantic or intriguing to others, to INFJs it often feels like a wall they didn't build, but are constantly expected to explain. Their complexity isn't a puzzle meant to be solved, but a rich, layered identity built from observation, reflection, and experience. They want people to stop trying to dissect them and instead sit with them, present, curious, and open. They wish others knew that beneath the mystery is someone desperately hoping they won't always have to be mysterious, that someone will simply get it without needing a map, a manual, or a mask. They also want it to be understood that their tendency to disappear is not always a sign of trouble. Sometimes they step back because they need to realign, to breathe, to process the overload of information, emotion, and energy they've absorbed. INFJs often live in a constant state of internal sorting. What they feel versus what others feel, what's theirs to carry versus what they've taken on unintentionally. They wish people would let them take space without guilt or assumptions. Sometimes silence is not distance. It's the only way they can return to themselves. INFJs are rarely passive. They observe in silence, but inside, they are always engaged. They're analyzing, predicting, feeling, planning. People often mistake their quiet for disinterest, when in fact, it's the opposite. They're absorbing everything, watching how people treat others, listening to what's not said, connecting dots that others don't even know exist. And yet, this superpower can feel like a burden. They often see through people's facades, the lies they tell themselves, the games they play. But INFJs rarely call it out. Instead, they carry the weight of knowing, silently hoping the person will evolve on their own. They wish others knew how heavy that quiet knowing can be. Another thing INFJs also wish others understood is how easily they become emotionally attached, not to outcomes or appearances, but to essence. They become attached to someone's soul, to the hidden parts most overlook. They remember the way your voice softened when you spoke about your childhood, the way your eyes lit up when you talked about a dream. They're not interested in who you are on paper. They want to know what keeps you up at night, what you survived, what you secretly believe about life. When they bond, it's not momentary. It's spiritual. And when that bond is broken or treated lightly, it leaves a scar no one sees. INFJs also struggle deeply with guilt, the kind that isn't always rational, but ever present. They worry if they've said too much or not enough. They carry the weight of conversations from years ago, wondering if they could have done better, been gentler, more truthful. They replay memories like films, looking for moments they might have missed or misunderstood. They wish people knew how much energy they spend trying to do right by everyone, and how often they forget to extend that same grace to themselves. INFJs often feel like they're living two lives. The outer life that others see, calm, thoughtful, kind, and the inner life, which is intense, restless, alive with visions and questions and quiet battles. They may look like they have it all together, but inside, they are constantly evolving, questioning, reaching. They wish people would stop assuming they're okay, just because they seem composed. They want someone to ask what they're dreaming about, what's breaking their heart, what they're quietly building when no one is watching. More than anything, INFJs wish they didn't always have to be strong, that someone would offer them the gentleness they offer so freely, that someone would hold space for their grief, their weariness, their longing. They don't expect perfection. They don't even need answers. What they crave is sincerity, presence, a soul who won't shrink back when they show the depths. Someone who will say, "You don't have to carry everything. I'm here." Because for INFJs, love isn't just romance. It's being deeply known, being held in the dark, being safe enough to fall apart, and still believed in. They wish people understood that this is what they're always searching for, not attention, not admiration, but a place where their soul can exhale. They wish people could feel what it's like to carry so many emotional layers at once. The pain of someone across the room, the beauty of a song playing quietly in the background, the subtle guilt about something they said 3 days ago, the spiritual question that's been circling in their head all morning. Their inner world is not chaotic. It's rich, detailed, and multidimensional. But it's also exhausting. They wish people knew that when they say they're tired, it's not just physical fatigue. It's soul-deep weariness from constantly being tuned into everything and everyone. They long for others to understand that their empathy is not a simple trait, it's a language. One they speak fluently, but few speak back to them. Most people don't realize that INFJs absorb emotions like skin absorbs sunlight. They don't try to feel what others feel, it just happens. And when they offer insight into someone's inner world, it's not because they're guessing, it's because they've felt it themselves. But when this gift is dismissed or invalidated, when someone says, "You're overthinking," or "That's not what I meant," it cuts them more deeply than words can say. They wish people wouldn't just value their empathy when it's convenient, but honor it when it challenges, reveals, or speaks truth. There's a certain kind of grief that INFJs carry, and they don't talk about it often. It's the grief of watching the world choose noise over depth, appearances over substance, speed over reflection. They see the direction things are going, and it hurts. They wish people knew that their quiet sadness isn't pessimism, it's mourning. Mourning for the loss of meaning, the loss of soul in everyday life. They want people to slow down, to care, to ask better questions, to listen, not just to respond, but to understand. INFJs wish people would understand how hard it is to unsee things. Once they notice an inconsistency in someone's behavior, a crack in a story, or a misalignment between words and actions, they can't pretend they didn't. But instead of confronting it immediately, they usually wait. They observe. They try to make sense of it in a compassionate way. They want to believe the best. But when the truth becomes undeniable, and they finally speak up, they're often met with defensiveness. Then, they're labeled as too intense or dramatic. And that hurts, not just because they were dismissed, but because they waited so long to speak, hoping they wouldn't have to. They also wish people understood that their need for solitude is sacred. It's not about rejecting people. It's about recharging their soul. When they're alone, they're not escaping. They're returning to their thoughts, their intuition, their center. It's in these quiet moments that they make sense of the world, grieve what they couldn't cry about in public, and reconnect with their vision. When someone pushes them to come out more, or be more social, it feels like a dismissal of their nature. INFJs don't need fixing. They need freedom to be who they are, without explanation. Another hidden longing is their desire to be pursued, not romantically alone, but emotionally, spiritually, intellectually. INFJs are almost always the ones reaching out, checking in, initiating deep conversations. But they wonder, often quietly, what it would feel like for someone to chase their soul. To ask unprompted, "What's been on your mind lately?" Or "What's something you've never told anyone?" They long to be explored, not for curiosity's sake, but because someone wants to know them deeply. Not the polished version, the real one. They wish others knew that they're not fragile, but they are sensitive in the truest sense. They sense things, feel things, live in the realm of meaning, energy, and essence. And while that makes them incredibly strong in ways most never see, it also leaves them vulnerable to deep internal battles. They're constantly navigating emotional landscapes that others don't even realize exist. And when they seem quiet or withdrawn, it's not because they're lost. It's because they're processing something profound. Sometimes about the world, sometimes about a loved one, sometimes about themselves. INFJs wish people would stop assuming they're difficult to love. Yes, they're complex. Yes, they have moods, layers, and intense emotions. But beneath it all, they're full of warmth, loyalty, and tenderness. They love with a depth that doesn't flinch. When they trust you, truly trust you, they will stand by you in ways no one else will. All they ask is that you meet them there. Not with perfection, not with answers, just with presence, honesty, and an open heart. Unlock the power of your INFJ personality. Check out our INFJ course and INFJ ebook. The links are in the description of this video.